women who don't hate men are a minority voice in the West. Swirling divest are Black women who hate Black men, idolize white men, but aren't willing to do the things that they need to do to actually get the white men that they like, such as lose weight and be quiet. I'm not gonna look at a woman and say that she's a horrible person or she's less than just because she's single. Like, I was single at one point, and I don't think being single itself is inherently bad. I just don't like women who are single who use every 15 seconds as a way to demonize men, to down talk marriage, to fear-monger relationships, all that kind of different stuff, while at the same time pedestalizing white men, but at the same time also having smoke for white women. Talk a little bit today about the KEISHA Cold War, okay? The KEISHA Cold War is real. And really what that is, it's the simple fact that Black women do not get along. Not all Black women get along. We just have to be in acceptance of it. And that very fact that not all Black women get along and not all Black women agree has come online. And I'm seeing it a few different ways. But if I was to define the KEISHA Cold War, I would break it down into the pickmes versus the skipmes, and Black women who want to take accountability and those who do not. That's really what I would do to break it down. I want to talk a little bit more about the pickmes, right? Women who don't hate men. Women who maybe actually want to have healthy relationships with men. Black women who don't hate Black men. Right, that. We talked a little bit about the pickmes. So the thing I found about those who are labeled pickmes, male-identified, use whatever disparaging term that you can think of, the women who don't hate men, is that those ladies are oftentimes a lot more quiet. They're a lot more quiet, or they have been. And the primary reason is because those ladies are oftentimes afraid of being bullied by the sisterhood. They don't want to be targeted. They don't want to go through all the shaming tactics they have to go through. They don't want to have to go through the hazing. They don't want to have to go through the bullying. They have essentially, a lot of them have been bullied into silence. They may follow me quietly, or they may follow content creators like me or people who support these kinds of messages, but they're not necessarily going to be so out loud about their support because sometimes they do fear being completely and totally castigated from the sisterhood, which has the louder voice and oftentimes which has the media mainstream support. So that is one thing that I've noticed about those who are labeled pickmes or those who actually don't hate men, because that they're oftentimes bullied into silence, or it may be a little harder for them to speak out because they feel like they're going not only against the sisterhood, they're actually in some ways going against a mainstream media message. Because let it be clear, there is a ton of money made off of misandry. There is so much money connected to misandry, particularly anti-Black misandry. Just think, for example, that article that just went viral last week on why dating is embarrassing, right? That article that went viral a few weeks ago on why dating men is embarrassing, why having a boyfriend is embarrassing. It's like every few decades, even every few years, they're having to reintroduce misandry to a new generation. They're having to re-indoctrinate generations on misandry in order to keep the cog on the wheel going, in order to keep that, that money-making machine live and well. There's so much money in misandry. And so I'm saying that because women who don't hate men are a minority voice in the West. Women who don't have a problem centering men, particularly in the Black American community, particularly in the Black American community, are seen as a minority up against the mainstream system, up against the sisterhood, up against, again, you have to remember, these largely feminist media outlets, media sources. They're ostracized. And so because of that, they may not be as vocal, they may not be as quick to speak up, but they are there. Here's another thing that I noticed too about the pickmes. Sometimes pickmes are just busy living their life, right? Not everyone don't hate men, and therefore you have a family and you're like in the heat of like child rearing, or, you have your job, but between your job and child rearing or whatever, like you're just not online for whatever reason. You're just not online. Like you're not completely privy to all of the insanity that happens online. I'm on here because I work for myself, and this is what I like to do for fun. So, but outside of that, like if you're not a person who does like social media for a living, or you have like your own life, you have your own job or whatever, like you just may not be online because you're actually busy with your husband and your family and your life and your job and your career or whatever. And so you also may not just be online in those spaces. And so that's something else I've also noticed about like the pickmes, the pickme space, the pickme sector. But what I'm saying is they are antagonistic. The pickmes are going to be completely antagonistic, or are going to be are oftentimes seen as direct enemies to the pass-mes, right? Or the skipmes, the women who don't like men. unless they're white. Because let it be clear, and that skip me category is a whole bunch of swirling divester people, swirling divester black women who hate black men, idolize white men, but aren't willing to do the things that they need to do to actually get the white men that they like, such as lose weight and be quiet. Not willing to do it. Because truth be told, the kind of white men that they want and idolize are white men who are looking for ladies to lose weight and be quiet. So again, why they're not picked, why they're skipped. But anyways, in that whole space, right, is women who hate men or women who hate black men. But those women they're going to be antagonistic to pickmes. They're going to be antagonistic to black women who like black men, who advocate for black men, who believe in their voice, or who disbelieve in families, who like families, who don't mind being like feminine, who don't mind like cooking and cleaning and doing laundry. Like, they're going to be antagonistic because the very lifestyle of a pick me undermines the messages that the skipmes have, which is, you know, you have the decenter men because these men are dusties, or these men are broke, or these men are abusive, or these men don't like black women, or these men are whatever. Like, whatever narrative that the skipmes have to try to demonize men and act like they're like the biggest monsters in the world and therefore can't be in a relationship with, the very presence of the pickmes completely undermines their narrative. It completely undermines their whole grift. And so this is why they're at war. This is completely why they're at war. Because if you're a skipme and you say, oh, black men are dusty and horrible, they're stupid, they're broke, and they don't care for your wives, they don't care for their wives or their girlfriends, and they only want white women. And then here you are, a dark-skinned, beautiful black woman, and you have a man who's loving on you and taking you all these nice places and giving you a nice life and, you know, just treating you like his queen. Your very existence, your very lifestyle undermines the message of the skipmes. So they don't get along. They can't get along because their very lifestyles themselves do not mix. And listen, here's the thing about it. As a married woman, I love being married. I love family. I always advocate for black love. I always advocate for just for love, period, for marriage under God, all of that, all day, every day, right? But I'm not gonna look at a woman and say that she's a horrible person or she's less than just because she's single. Like, I was single at one point, and I don't think being single itself is inherently bad. I just don't like women who are single who use every 15 seconds as a way to demonize men, to down talk marriage, to fear-monger relationships, all that kind of different stuff, while at the same time pedestalizing white men, but at the same time also having smoke for white women. That's the kind of stuff to me that's in the skip me category, and I'm like, I can't. I can't come into agreement with that, you know? So the KEISHA Cold War is real. And here's another thing I'm going to tell you about the KEISHA Cold War. Women who they embody the KEISHA-ism, the KEISHA whatever, the KEISHA mentality, they don't want an honest conversation. They want to rig the conversation in their favor. They don't want an open, honest forum where you can discuss ideas and come up with who has a right, okay, who's correct. You know, they don't want a conversation at all. They want to rig the conversation in their favor. They want it to be a monologue. They don't want a dialogue. They don't want an open discourse. They don't want a meeting of the mind. Let's discuss. Let's try to hash through what ideas are best, what ideas are not, what ideas can be evolved. They don't want that. They simply want to be able to grift and share their narrative. And they are incredibly threatened by the truth. And they are incredibly threatened by people who have lifestyles that undermine their grift, undermine their lives. This is also why, in my opinion, the pickmes, right? What they like to call the male identified, there's all kinds of different terms I've been called, right? They are a threat to the skipmes. They're a threat to the pass-mes because, again, their very lifestyle and their very existence completely undermines the grift. And my thing is, like, you could just be accountable. If you believe your whole life that, oh, you know, all these black men particularly are, you know, they're unaliving their wives and they seem secretly like white women, but that they're also gay, but then they're broke, but then when they have money, they only go for Becky, but then when they're with Becky, they're thinking about Brad. You know, whatever narrative that you use to try to say that black men aren't marriageable or they don't want to marry, although they actually are more married than the black women. But whatever excuse you have in your brain, if you actually start to see that there are women who are just like you in the community who are having completely different results, to me, it doesn't have to be a competition. Maybe it's like, oh, okay, maybe I have the wrong information. Maybe I'm believing a lie. Maybe I can start to ask myself whether or not I am behaving and moving off of false information, and I can get new information and actually get the kind of relationships I want. Like, to me, it doesn't have to be a competition. If you're in the skip me category and you get more information that actually helps give you the kind of lifestyle you want, then you can be pick me. And I'm like, and there's no issue. There's no issue at all. Like, in my opinion, I'm like, the pickmes can be helping the skipmes, so they're not skipped. Like, to me, it could be a collaboration. But if you want to grift, and if you are dedicated to being miserable, there's not really much an alliance there. And that, in my opinion, guys, is why the KEISHA Cold War is still active. Anyways, those are my thoughts. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know down in the comment section. Thank you so much for listening if you've gotten this far, and we'll talk later. Bye.